Today we're going to talk about how to protect your wealth with the two-bucket system. You need to look at your money in terms of two buckets. Your first bucket is your core capital. This is money that you can't lose, no matter what. So you want to put this money into things like savings accounts, checking accounts, CDs, government bonds, safe and secure and insured, right? Or all three. So these are the safest places to put your core capital because they're safe, they're secured, and in a lot of cases they're insured, right? Now, I'm not going to address inflation in these examples, but inflation aside, this is where you should be putting your core capital. Your risk capital is money that you can afford to lose. What falls under some examples of what you should do with your risk capital? Any form of investment that you decide to make, you should be making it with your risk capital, not your core capital. Some popular investments that most people make in the stock market is through 401ks and IRAs. Real estate, and any type of business that you become part of or start. So these are the top investments that people make that I wanted to point out. However, I think that the average person, unfortunately, they take their core capital and put it into these different investments thinking that it's a safe place to protect their core capital. So remember, if there is a risk of loss to your money, you should be using your risk capital, not your core capital. There are two rules that you should always follow when it comes to these two buckets. The first rule is that your risk capital can become core capital. But rule number two, core capital cannot become risk capital. So the power in putting your money into these separate buckets is this. When you have money in this bucket that mentally you have said to yourself, this is money that I can afford to lose, you're able to really take advantage of opportunities as they come without worrying so much about losing the money, because this money was put to the side for you to take a risk on. It's called an investment. And as you make investments with your risk capital, and those investments start to pay off, it will allow you to diversify into other things that you may not have considered because they may have been risky. But what you want to do to really, grow your wealth from the risk capital perspective is put some money in your risk capital bucket that we all need to have. You need to have some form of investment out there. And as you make money from those investments, you want to diversify those profits from those assets into other things that may be able to generate a bigger return for you, maybe slightly more higher on the risk scale. But you are making money with money that you've already made, right? So that's the beauty of compounding. So if you mentally or physically separate your money, core capital, bucket number one, risk capital, bucket number two, it will really allow you to take advantage of opportunities that you would never have dreamt of taking advantage of, because most people have one bucket and they do everything with that one bucket, and that is very dangerous. So looking at rule number one, risk capital can become core capital. That is how you can grow your core capital, right? So above and beyond, saving, if you make money over on your risk capital side, you can decide what percent of profit do you want to put over into your core capital as you make the money, right? Whether that's 10%, 20%, that's something that you have to decide. But that's a way for you to constantly be growing your core capital and putting it into these different vehicles to grow and protect your wealth. So that way, no matter what happens, your core capital is safe and is constantly growing because you are moving risk capital over to your core capital. And if you can stick to these two rules of keeping your risk capital there and only taking risk capital and putting it over in the core capital, and never ever taking your core capital and putting it over into your risk capital, if you can follow these two rules, you will be so far ahead of the average person, and not only from a knowledge perspective, but also from a financial perspective. So if you are interested in some of the things that I do with my risk capital, go to the link below and take a look on what I'm doing to increase my risk capital. Thank you. Have a great day.